Hello and welcome to Did You Say That Out Loud? This is Marette and I'll be spending a few minutes with friends and we're going to chat about life and kids and friends and travel and crazy topics and a few memories. So I can guarantee that you will laugh and you may learn a few things about what brings people together and what keeps them connected in their relationships and their faith walk. Hope you enjoy. Well, hi, this is Marette, and I am here in Illinois in my brother and sister-in-law's kitchen. This is Kristin Haubenreich Campbell.
Correct.
Do you ever refer to yourself with all three?
Sometimes, yes.
Because it gives people a frame.
Right.
So I remember your family long before you married my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Your mom and dad and the Warners were at church.
Mm-hmm.
And Joel wanted to play trumpet.
Right.
Your younger brother.
The youngest of five. Yeah.
So your mom would come to my house.
Uh-huh.
And she would play with Tyler and
Bailey. Right.
And I'm sure I probably had the easier job.
Yes, she does talk about how she often had to keep Bailey from whacking on Tyler when you'd think it was the reverse, because Tyler is the older one. And he was hefty enough, but Bailey was the more aggressive one.
I'm sure nowadays she would like to whomp on him too. They were very, very close in age, and they were very, very good friends growing up.
Yeah.
They were inseparable, but they also, that's Bailey. We love Bailey. So I'm sitting in your kitchen, and you have been known in our family to be the cook.
Okay.
And more than a few times when we'd come to your house, you would put food in front of our kids that they hadn't seen before.
Yes.
And the big one is goose poop.
Goose poop, also known as couscous, right?
Yes. We have laughed over that because then I started making it.
Yeah.
And I like couscous.
Yes, it's so good.
The rest of my family has not
adapted their taste.
Adley maybe, but definitely now. They called it goose poop. And you had a rule, because it was your house, they had to try it.
They had to try it, yep.
So we have giggled more than once about that.
They never knew what they were getting with Aunt Kristin, did they?
But you also always had dessert.
Right.
And we did not grow up having dessert as a normal food. It wasn't in the food group.
Yeah.
So dessert was special.
Okay.
Probably Sundays. But then again, we always had cookies and cake around because the farm, that's one thing you just...
Oh, yeah.
So
to add calories.
To us, it wasn't dessert.
It was
normal.
Just part of,
It was normal. There's always cookies and there's always cake because my dad liked cookies and cake. And if you didn't have them at your house, then we walked up the lane to Grandma's.
And she always had them?
Grandma always had cookies. And Mother's rule was no eating before lunch.
Right.
So we'd go to Grandma's and our dad would be sitting there
eating
cookies. So we'd all eat cookies and look at each other. Nobody's telling your mother. And Mother's passed away, so we aren't going to get in trouble.
Right, exactly.
So sitting in your kitchen looking around, what is one ingredient or two ingredients that you cook with that you don't ever want to be without? Because you cook a lot.
Yes, I do. And you're talking about food ingredients?
I'm talking about ingredients you used to,
The number one I use is vanilla. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, baking, cooking. You don't use that in cooking as much, but baking, the sweetness and just like the depth of vanilla added to cakes and cookies and homemade breads, like banana bread and things like that, is just that's what distinguishes homemade from box cooking sometimes. I mean, you'll see if you use a box mix, a lot of times home cooks will add a little bit of vanilla into the mix to kind of make it taste homier. So anyway, I invest in high quality vanilla because I really feel strongly about it. I'm not buying imitation. Yeah, I'm particular to Rodell's, which you can buy at Kroger.
So we don't have Kroger in Minnesota, but have you gotten people to bring it back from Mexico?
I have, and I do not like the flavor of Mexican vanilla.
Okay.
It's just, I can't even identify what it is that's different, but it has a different flavor. And you can identify the flavor in the goods that you make. And so vanilla should add depth and add sweetness, but not knock you in the face, It's not like when you walk into a room and someone's burning a vanilla candle and you're like, whoa! in baking, it's more subtle. It's like, it's built in. It's the love built into the, the dish.
This has now become not the British Bake Off,
right?
But the Germantown
Hills.
Germantown Hills hints.
Right.
Right. Because I know one time at the lake house or the cabin, probably the cabin, you went and bought vanilla because I didn't have it.
Oh, really?
Yes,
oh my
I remember
goodness.
that.
That's funny.
And
Yeah, that's definitely, that's the number one. And then the other thing that I feel pretty strongly about is seasonings. So it was really funny when I married Aaron and then would go into your mom's kitchen and look in the cupboards, trying to, make stuff there. She would have mostly salt and pepper, and cinnamon was big for her because she did like a lot of apple pies and things like that. But she really didn't have herbs and spices. And if you look at my spice cabinet, it's overflowing. It's ridiculous. The ones I use the most, though, are like Italian seasoning blends.
Is that where Bailey gets it?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, she's gone off even to more exotic mixes. Like she's found some ones at Trader Joe's that are like really fascinating.
And now I go to the lake house.
And there's stuff in the pantry. You're like,
Bailey's there a lot.
Yeah.
And I am stocked. And I'm learning to, especially when I make breads with a bread machine, I'm learning to throw some of that fresh stuff in. Because it does.
Like rosemary in a nice fresh
And she has made the attempt to grow them in her backyard, and I just will buy them because I'm not going to have another failed indoor plant. So now looking at your kitchen right now, what utensil or equipment could you not live without?
Could I not live without my spatulas? Probably. Because again, I mean, whether you're cooking or you're baking, I'm using them all the time. So I use spatulas and I use sheet pans a lot. You've got cookies, you've got sheet pan dinners, like, salmon and roasted veggies. I was just actually thinking about that the other day. I probably use sheet pans daily. Yeah. I should mention the coffee maker, but I feel like that goes without saying. I know that's just like the elixir of life. So it just, I just gloss over it.
And you've not changed my brother in all these years to drink
like coffee.
But your girls drink coffee.
Well, 2 of the 3 do.
2 of the 3. Which one doesn't?
Emily.
Oh, good.
She did when
I
she
knew
was...
I liked Emily. I knew she was my favorite. But I remember when your girls were little, probably more Anna than anything, and Jenna especially, sitting there sipping this
tiny little espresso cups.
Yeah, yes. And probably was in Singapore when I remember some of that.
I think I probably introduced your kids to coffee too. With those little cups and cream and sugar. And then, when Adley would come as a young teen, we would get frou-frou drinks and...
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. So, one of the coolest things I did last week when I was in Franklin, Nashville area, was go to see your granny.
Yes.
And I was telling her the first time we met her, which is a horrible first meeting, we had been at the Parthenon, and I don't know what happened, but Bailey was the one who threw up all the time.
Right.
And she was little.
You always carried buckets.
Yes. With Adley, we were playing, I don't know what was going on, we pull up to your granny's house, we're standing on the front door, and Adley goes, I got to throw up. And Granny opened the door, and you must have said, we got a sick kid, we'll go to the bathroom. And I'm like going, I have no clue where to get to this lady's house.
Exactly.
So I had Adley throw up in the bush. And we were reminding Granny of that. And we giggled. So and then I got to eat lunch with your grandmother in Knoxville.
Right.
On my way.
Yes, not too long before she died.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
really
what
special.
is some of the coolest advice your grandmothers gave you?
Well, oh my goodness, how to capture that in just a few
your
words.
grandmothers were, I don't
very
know them well, but
different.
very different. Very
Yes.
different.
So the one you just saw, Gran, Phyllis Hamilton is her name. She is mother of 6 children, and she was divorced young, and so she ended up being a single mom, raising the kids from, my mom was the oldest, and she was 17 when their father left. And so watching her trying to balance life through the years was always interesting. It really helped develop compassion in me, because she had been rejected by her church family for being divorced, even though she was not the one at fault, and really struggled with walking out her faith and growing without the loving support of a church family. So that was an interesting concept for me to witness and then to wrestle with, throughout life with her. But she loves to laugh. She hates to cook. And she taught me how to cross stitch.
Oh.
And I still love it to this day. I put it aside for maybe 10 or 15 years and then picked it up again. But she was just one of those warm, loving, you could snuggle up to grandmothers. And she always had long, strong nails, even though she did gardening and stitching and things like that, and she gave the best back scratches. So you could cuddle up to her and she'd give you back scratch, and she just laugh and listen to you. She just really always took time to make you feel loved and wanted. And she I remember going to her house, and like I said, she didn't like to cook, but if she fed you, she wanted to make sure it was something you liked. So she would make really good hamburgers in the broiler oven and homemade French fries, and she made grilled cheese with white bread. And in my house growing up, we had wheat bread, and we had hard cheddar cheese that my mom sliced in these little thin slivers, put it on, and spread with margarine.
Yeah, you had to look for it to find it.
Yeah, and Granny had white bread with real butter and 2 slices of American cheese. I mean, it's like you died and went to heaven. I mean, so anyway, she always had M&Ms on the counter, and so when you went into her house, you always felt loved and welcomed and wanted. And so that was wonderful. Grandmother, Marianne Haubenreich, was from a pretty genteel family. Her family came from East Tennessee, went back generations in the Knoxville area. Her father was the treasurer of the University of Tennessee. So they were kind of society people. And so she was always... she was one of those people who said, when you get up in the morning, always put on your face, because the first day you don't do that, someone will knock on the door. So she was very intentional, I guess, with, starting her day on the right foot, looking the part, dressing the part, and
elegant.
And people do, like, even now refer to her as being very elegant. She practiced hospitality beautifully, and she did it a little bit more formally than Gran did. Well, where you walked into Gran's house, and it was just, she kept a very tidy house, but it was very, comfortable, come and go. With grandmother, you were highly anticipated. She was always glad you were coming. She made special things, had, things for dinner, set the places. Often she and Granddaddy traveled extensively once they were retired, or towards the end of Granddaddy's career. And she always had things on the table that represented parts of their travel, and so had interesting stories to tell and that sort of thing. So from her, I think I learned a lot about the art of hospitality, and I'm so grateful for that. And both of them were pivotal for me as far as, in my formative years, going to their houses in the summer for weeks at a time. She did teach me to sew on the sewing machine, so that was neat. She didn't do a lot of it, but that was a fun skill to learn. She loved to hike. Her happy place was in the mountains, and so grew up going to the Smoky Mountains, and just absolutely loved that. So the love of nature, the love of people, the love of sharing your home was really important. So, but both of them spoke into my life in words and deeds,
And I'm not sure where the wild rice came into play. But my mother must have brought her wild rice.
Yes.
And then we had to keep getting wild rice to grandmother. And that's what I stopped at your folks, and then I went to grandmother's on my way to either pick Tyler up or see Tyler, and brought her a bag of wild rice. And then she realized she could order it.
or find it locally. So for many years,
maybe it was when Mother died too.
It also, yes, it went hand in hand. So for many years, like I said, they had traveled a lot. One of their trips was to Ely, Minnesota, to the wolf sanctuary. And they had some wonderful wild rice dishes that she liked to replicate at home, but could not find good Minnesota wild rice down in Tennessee anywhere. Okay. And that's before the internet was big. Yep. So she reached out to your mom.
Okay.
And your mom started bringing it, and then just kind of perpetuated the cycle. And she was grandmother's supplier.
Yes.
Well, that sounds kind of weird,
yes.
But anyway, and that gave them a connection, and they were actually closer in age than my mother and your mom, and so that was neat.
Yes, because at your wedding, it was interesting because Aaron's sister was the age of your mother, and Aaron's mother was the age of your grandmother.
Correct.
So kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Last question.
Sure.
You have traveled all around the world.
Yes.
And you've had that blessing of living in Singapore for 5 years?
4 years.
4 years. And then you've gone places. So one of the things I really emphasize this podcast is all about is friendships.
Yeah.
Being intentional. So how do you go to a foreign country, 10,000 miles away, knowing you're not going to be there, and establish friendships? And as we were talking last night, some of those friendships appeared at Anna's wedding.
Yes.
What is just some quick advice on, we are living in an age where people don't want to put the time into relationships, especially if they know they're going to leave.
Right.
Why go to all the work to just be hurt or to walk away? So you've done it extremely well.
Oh, thanks.
So how have you done it?
So what I would say to that, and I actually saw it come to life in full color in Singapore, because we were in an international community school and an international Baptist church. So we rubbed shoulders with people from all over the world. And I was struck by how many people dove into the experience. Now, there were some who came there, had a bad attitude, stayed in their houses, tried to find only American products, that type of thing, and really did not enjoy the culture. But I would say more people than not that we interacted with said, you know what, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We're going to get in and make it everything we can make it. We are going to, and the fact that you're away from family makes it even more important to develop relationships quickly. But they were able to go deep fast because you knew that time was of the essence. You didn't know how much time you had. Most people there didn't know if they were there for 6 months, 2 years, 4 years. You didn't know. And so you went deep and fast. And I thought that was just a really, really good example for us all through life. Because isn't it true? We don't know when our last breath will be.
True. Good point.
And so, as much as we can, I think it's important to go deep fast. I am not a really good surface level converser, I don't think. I usually ask kind of deeper questions, and maybe it may make some people uncomfortable, but I feel like I get to know people a lot faster.
Or you find out who's not going to engage.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
You find
kind
out
of the filter.
Yep.
Right.
And we talked a lot about one of my conversations. I've been gone almost 3 weeks, and I've talked to a lot of people. But we talked about how laughter introduces you to people.
Yes.
And then you feel people out by laughing.
Yes.
Then you can go deeper.
Yes.
And if someone will not laugh with you,
then you're like,
they won't go deep with you.
Right.
That's kind of a telltale sign.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
And there are definitely instances. I mean, I remember one gal who we initially thought we would hit it off really well. And so we went on trial dates, if you will. And they say like within 3 dates with someone, like, you meet up to go for a walk or you meet for coffee or whatever. Usually whether that friendship is going to be a pivotal one in your life and you're going to really pursue, or if this will be more, you're on great terms, you're good acquaintances, but you're just going to meet and enjoy each other and not necessarily have that deep bond. And that was one instance where we each thought the other would be a good potential, best friend or whatever, but it didn't really work out that way. And that was fine. We each appreciated each other and enjoyed when we did see each other, but it just wasn't one of those things. So that was a good lesson for me too, in learning that it's okay to vet people out and realize that some people will serve different roles, that you don't have to go deep with everyone. And if you don't go deep with them, doesn't mean that you failed in some way, or that they have, or there's something lacking in either one. It's just, we have natural propensities, to each other, some more than others.
And that's healthy.
Yeah,
it's very healthy.
Sure.
I know in the last 2 years, some of the best friends that I've developed are people I would have never thought.
Right.
Because God, I think, leads you in places and opens the door.
That's
and it's
right.
just a matter of,
And it's amazing. You were sharing over breakfast this morning, 2 women in your Bible study who had overlapping medical diagnoses and commonalities that they did not realize before they were in a group together and sharing life together. And you're right, God brings us into relationship with people that we would not necessarily have picked out, but who end up being amazing.
And I think that's another reason why we never need to be afraid to share our story.
Yeah.
Because that will bring us to someone else who needs to hear our story.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be the crazy life crises in our life.
No.
Something we share in common, and then you start digging deep, and then you build relationships. So, well, this has been fun.
Yes.
Hasn't been that hard, has it?
It hasn't. I was really nervous, but it's been
fun.
It's been